Ashley, Scotland. I've known Ashley for a wee while now. We haven't actually physically met, obviously, through COVID, but we'll deal with that when times are better. Ashley is the Chief Executive Founder of Thriving Survivors Limited. She's an accomplished Chief Executive with a wealth of experience in programme design, development and delivery. Our focus on support, Ashley's focus on support and advocacy is demonstrated through the creation of Thriving Survivors, a charitable organisation established in 2016. Ashley is a living illustration of the three-stage research demonstrating that a sense of purpose in life is associated with both recovery and resilience in trauma survivors. She's a mum to 3 amazing kids. She's got 2 King Charles Cavaliers. We all like dog lovers. I'm a dog lover myself. She admits to being a bit of an adrenaline freak who loves motorbikes and fast cars. Ashley's not scared to stand up for what she believes in, even if that means standing alone. She attacks life with a warrior state of mind and rises to any challenge that comes her way. You will be taken on a journey as Ashley talks about her experience as a survivor of rape and domestic violence, how she overcame these dark days and 8 years of agoraphobia using her recovery toolkit. Ladies and gentlemen, Ashley, Scotland.
Thanks, Angela. I'll just bring this up. Sorry, give me a wee second. It's coming, honest. There we go. Okay, so thanks very much for introducing me there, Angela. I almost don't need to say anything. It's like you sort of captured it all, very high level. But today, I suppose I'll reflect some of what David said. You know, I'm going to talk about that compassion that comes through that sense of family, facing many challenges and trying to come and find a positive way forward and a way that can support other people. Certainly, the theme of today's conference is challenges, and I'm sure everybody's had their own fair share of them. And I meant coming here today, it was sort of, what do I speak about? You know, how do you hone in on just a couple? So I decided that I would tell you a little bit about Thriving Survivors and how the challenges that presented themselves in the creation of Thriving Survivors took me on a massive learning curve and a growth that still continues to this day, as well as lots and lots of success. So I'm going to take you on a journey, hopefully over the next 20 minutes or so. But I would like to pose a question to everybody first. As I speak through the next 20 minutes, ask yourself repeatedly, what would you do? Okay, so I'm just going to crack on now, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about Thriving Survivors, who we are and what we do. So Thriving Survivors works with lots of different people who've been affected by trauma, and it's such a wide-reaching word that we work with people who've faced bereavement, we work with people who've got adverse mental health, depression, anxiety, right through to your victims of serious crime. We do this by providing a 4-stage recovery pathway, and this supports people from all backgrounds as they progress through the stages of recovery that we offer, ensuring that they feel supported, valued and cared for as we progress along that journey. Our aim is to create a centre of excellence for trauma-affected individuals, regardless of race, culture or circumstance, and all of our services are delivered by people who've got lived experience. When it comes to talking about the vision for the organisation, this really comes back to what my long-term vision has always been, and that was to create an end-to-end service that was based on my own unique insight. I am personally a living illustration of the 3-stage research that demonstrates a sense of purpose in life is associated with recovery and resilience. This was Judith L. Herman, MD, who's a professor in psychiatry at Harvard Medical School, that coined this 3-stage theory. in her work, The Trauma and Recovery, the Aftermath of Violence, from domestic abuse to political terror. The impact that this research had on my recovery, on my whole life as it is now, has been nothing short of an inspiration, and indeed it is where the whole basis and ethos of Thriving Survivors lies. So let me tell you a wee bit more about the stages that we take people through. So throughout all stages of recovery, it is so important that we address the psychological themes and dynamics that are related to a survivor's own history of unwanted or abusive experiences. Survivors can experience powerlessness, shame, guilt, distrust, and this all needs to be addressed at stage 1. So stage 1 is very much about a period of safety and stabilisation, about finding that safety and stability in your mind, your body, your relationships, and trying to reach that out through all different aspects of your life. Once you've started to go through this process, you can then consider stage 2. Now, stage 2 is very much a clinical process. It's remembrance and mourning. And this is very much about going back and looking at the deep trauma that lies within. And this is very much carried out by a counsellor. And this can only be done once you've established that a certain level of safety, stabilisation, awareness, understanding of what that trauma means. Before we can start to unpick it all, we first need to know what it's doing to us. This stage can often be skipped. So a lot of times people who come in at stage 1 might not ever be ready or ever want to go back and do that deep clinical work. And for some people, they will just jump straight to stage 3. Stage 3 is about finding meaning. This is about a sense of purpose in life, finding access to meaningful activities, and really starting to engage with all other aspects of your life in a more balanced way, because you're ready to actually start looking at the future and what lies ahead of you. Now, I did say that Herman had created 3 stages. I have since developed a 4th, and this is living life with purpose. You move beyond the growth stage. Whilst you continue to grow on a daily basis. For me, we got to the end of the growth programme and I thought to myself, there's got to be something more. And what I recognised is what we were doing with staff and volunteers was helping them to live life with purpose. So this particular stage is very much about training, upskilling, about making sure people have got opportunities for volunteering. In essence, our 4 stages will take somebody from feeling powerless to feeling empowered, from feeling deep shame and distrust to feeling that they are, oh, my slides away, sorry. From feeling deep shame and guilt to actually feeling very confident within themselves, and then starting to lose that feeling of distrust and not only feeling supported but going on to support others in their journey. So that's who we are and sort of what we try to do. This is how we do it. So our services, we've got a vast amount of services that are available for people, but I thought I would just pick some of the highlights. So first up's our digital survival pack. And as David had previously mentioned, COVID changed everybody's environment and we very much became a digital world. For a lot of our service users, the survivors that we worked with, they couldn't access our services. So we created digital survival packs. We managed to secure some funding to provide people with a digital tablet, so an electronic device, an internet connection and full support in terms of upskilling, learning how to use it. There was a manual in there. So we really made sure that our clients could remain connected. And we ended up having 60 people go through this service in the year, and it was really quite astonishing. So this digital survival pack is about connecting people with a purpose, not just giving people devices, not just giving them internet, but actually giving them a purpose to use it. And I'll come back to that when I come to the bridge to the recovery. Our one-to-one mentoring program, this is very much one of our core services. Survivors, when they first come into our organisation, will be paired with a mentor who has a similar life experience, and that mentor will be with them throughout their entire journey with thriving survivors, so across all 3 stages. The Bridge to Recovery program, this came from the digital survival packs, and essentially what it does is it brings together a group of peers, complete strangers, and they have chatty, crafty Tuesdays and chatty Fridays on Zoom, and then they also have a 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week chat box. And believe it or not, this chat box is the place that we put everybody that comes in, that if we've maybe got a waiting list, then this lovely group of peers who've been through our services welcome people in and are able to support them whilst we're waiting for access to services. Charities have had to become very, very agile in the past year. And as David had said, it is about how do we respond to that and how do we keep thinking outside the box? And having that Bridge to Recovery programme allows us to do that because it's completely survivor-led. So they're influencing how we're delivering our services. The next service we offer is our one-to-one counselling. Of course, this is the stage 2 programme, and this is the deep clinical recovery process that takes place. As I said before, people can skip from one stage to the next. The Discovering Me programme very much sits at stage 3, and this is about post-traumatic growth. So this is where it all began for me, this Discovering Me programme, and very much our founding service. So I will come back and I'll touch on a wee bit of its origins later on as we progress through. The mentoring and training programme that we deliver, this is a fabulous opportunity for anyone who's been through our services to actually get involved in training and actually then becoming mentors and facilitators themselves. And that's done through a volunteer period. However, come the end of that volunteer period, if there's scope and there's funding available, then we're looking at employment for people that successfully complete the programmes and want to go on and join Thriving Survivors team. So that's our services. That's what we do and how we do it. Now is probably quite a good time to share with everybody that when I started Thriving Survivors, I did it with no business knowledge, an unemployment record that ran to nearly 10 years, and the inability to go outdoors as I battled with complex PTSD and agoraphobia. Having created the idea for Thriving Survivors from the very comfort of my own home, the next biggest challenge was actually to go out and to try and get the job done. I applied to the Entrepreneurial Spark programme in 2015, recognising that in order to make my big vision come to life, I was going to need some training, some advice, some support, just generally some guidance, because I had absolutely no idea what I was doing. I had to face my fears head on. In order to make that big vision become a reality, I had to go over the door. I was really successful in that application, and I started the Entrepreneurial Spark programme in 2016, where I entered a 6-month business accelerator programme. And this is really where the journey for Thriving Survivors begins. As I look back, I can remember the very first day. I had to travel to Dundonald in Ayrshire, but I couldn't take public transport. I still couldn't get over the door on my own. So my faithful husband, he drove me all the way to Dundonald and dropped me off, drove back to Glasgow, and then drove back to Dundonald again in the afternoon to pick me up. And he did that the same again the following day. Had it not been for him, I would never have got there in the first place. But as the weeks continued, when I had went into that room the very first day, I remember opening the doors and there was like 40 something people in that room. So I'd came out the comfort of my own home. I'd been in the car, I was quite safe. And then I remember opening the doors to that room and being confronted by 40 something people who were all in suits and they looked dead sharp and they had their degrees and all their business knowledge. I was absolutely terrified. I think if you could have peeled me from the wall, then you would have had a good job on your hands. But certainly it was just terrifying. My husband stayed that faithful man that he is, and he kept taking me back and forward each day to the Entrepreneurial Spark office in the Gorbals. And as each day passed, I've got to say it got easier and easier. And before I knew it, I had started to gain some control over the agoraphobia. And that was my first big hurdle. And I will say that I still live with the niggles of it, but I would also say that I also manage it very, very well these days. We all have our bad days, don't we? Anyway, so having managed to conquer that, get some control over the agoraphobia, the next bit was obviously the setting up of the business. So this is always full of ups and downs. For anybody that started a business, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. I needed to get the organisation funded. So I've got into this business accelerator, I've got this fabulous idea, but I needed to get us funded. And I was very, very lucky, like David, to have the support of Firstport. And I remember the first funding application I done like it was yesterday. And it was handwritten and it was on more pages than I had available to me. So Firstport have got a really, really tight word count and it had to be in there, and I'm away pages and pages later writing War and Peace. So with some help and some guidance, I soon managed to narrow that down a bit and put in a successful application. They also supported me to draft my application for the Awards for All. And between the two pots of funding, I managed to get enough for set-up costs to run my first programme. And as David had also mentioned, the legal fees, which I've got to say I would never pay for again, but the things you learn as you go. So having recognised that money was running out, I'm thinking to myself, how am I going to keep that going? Again, I thought that I constantly get on a regular basis. How do we keep it going? But way back then, it was like, where am I going to get the money to pay for this? Because my money was running out and it was all my time volunteering. How am I going to start this? So I'm going to show you a wee video clip. I decided it was time to do some fundraising. So I did a bungee jump from the Titan crane, and I'll let everybody just have a quick watch at this now.
So you just jumped off the tank here and clear back. How was it?
It was awesome, absolutely awesome.
What was your cause?
It was to raise money for an empowerment and employability group for people that have survived different types of trauma.
Excellent.
So
What's your raised so far?
we're raised around about 500, but we're looking to hit another 1,000 to top of that. So
What's your message? Get your wallets out, folks.
Get your wallets out. I'll be there in about an hour once I go over, get ready. So get your wallets prepared.
Cheers, thanks for coming, mate.
Thank you.
So, of course, this was never going to be sustainable. I couldn't I couldn't keep throwing myself off of cranes. It was never going to work. But this was most definitely one of the best things I've ever done in my whole life. It was totally life-changing. It made me look at things so differently. And I suppose that jump gave me the feel that I needed to start powering on and powering through. But like I say, this was never going to be sustainable. 500 quid here and there, it's great when it comes in, but when you've got such a big vision, you need so much more money. So I, at this point, decided to contact Paul Gray, the chief executive of NHS Scotland at the time. He had no idea who I was. I just got his email off of Google and sent him a wee email and said, hiya, you don't know me, but I've got this amazing, inspiring growth programme for trauma survivors that just needs to be funded. He actually got back to me within a couple of days and then put me in touch with Scottish Government and the Survivors of Childhood Sexual Abuse Fund. And they funded Thriving Survivors when we were only 7 months in. Since then, I've went on and secured over £1 million in funding in 5 short years. So we've come such a long way since having to do bungee jumps off of cranes. But we've also become a national charity in the process. So this, looking back at this video, really is like looking back in time. Like it feels like so long ago. Of course, with all these challenges, what about the successes? So I'm going to tell you a couple of stories. I'm going to tell you about Scott, and let me introduce him. Scott came to us as a service user who had drug and alcohol problems, as well as quite bad anger issues and struggling to maintain any sort of healthy relationship with friends, family, including his children. Scott was long-term unemployed on state benefits and really just struggling to find his way. I remember Scott's first day as he came into the Discovering Me programme, and his body language said it all. The guy just didn't want to be in the room. He was so far away, it was unreal. But as the days progressed, you know, as the weeks went by, you seen his body language change. He was more engaged. He was opening his mind to the possibility of change. I think the biggest session for Scott was emotional intelligence, that ability to understand what your emotions are when they come up, rather than so often we all dismiss emotions. We don't even look at them in any great detail. We just sit with them. But Scott really started to process some of these emotions and look at where they were coming from, and indeed then how to manage them. But whilst Scott was learning about his own emotional intelligence, he was also learning about other people's emotions and how to deal with them as well. And that was a big turning point for him. Scott started to volunteer with us when we went to go live at the Green, and we were there for 10 days delivering personality tests, but we also ran a Design a Bear competition, and over 4,000 children from across the globe participated in Design a Bear, and Scott was absolutely integral to making sure that that was a success. He went on and he took part in the volunteer mentoring programme and then the facilitator programme, and Scott has now been employed, a full-time employee with Thriving Survivors for 3 years, and during that time has supported over 300 people. A blacksmith to trade, Scott never fails to amaze me at how he's turned his hand to supporting others. And I think this comes back to the whole concept of when you've been through something and you can understand it from somebody else's point of view, then you can almost put yourself in their shoes and understand what they're going through in a way that nobody else can. So Scott's really adapted to his new role, and it's been a joy to be part of that. Next, let me introduce you to Victoria. Victoria is slightly different to Scott. In fact, they're completely different. They're two completely different souls. But again, Victoria was a service user at Thriving Survivors. She came to me through the NHS mental health team. Victoria was 17 at the time when she was unemployed for the age of 17, and she'd been through various different services. had real trouble socialising with people and maintaining any sort of relationship with anybody other than family. When she first came into the programme, Victoria stated that her goal was just to maintain eye contact with someone. So Victoria could not look you in the eye, not at all. As the weeks went by, still no progress is being made. Do you know, I think if her granny hadn't made her come and sat where every week, then she would have ran for the hills weeks and weeks before. But by the time we got to week 7, something had changed in Victoria, and you could see there was a part of her that was looking to say something, that was looking to share a story. And that's exactly what Victoria done. And I think that was completely life-changing for her, because the week later, which was week 8, last session of the group, Victoria came in, smile on her face, makeup on, hair done, and looked us in the eye. And it was like, oh, how did that happen? Towards the end of that session, I happened to be mentioning in the office that I was looking for an admin volunteer and looking to take somebody on, train them up in the role, and do the whole process that we do. And Victoria overheard and happened to phone back later on that day and asked if she could have the volunteer admin role. And I seen absolutely no problem with it. I did wonder if it was going to take us some time. And however, Victoria, as of March 2021, became my trainee manager. And the girl is just not stopping there. Started an inclusive leadership programme. She holds meetings, she's ran team meetings. It's just incredible to see somebody completely transform their life because of a set of tools that they've opened their mind that the possibility of change can really happen. And I think so many times people just think it's not an option, especially when you've been through service after service after service. It can be very difficult to find that trust. So this is Scott and Victoria, and part of my team. In fact, it's half of my team. What does it mean to be a thriving survivor? Now, I could sit and discuss this question all day long, because we could pick it apart and put it back together, and we'll all have a different view on this. But for me, we've supported over 700 people to date. In 5 years, we've supported over 700 people, and we treat each one as an individual. No two people are the same. No two people have got the same experience. So for me, it was about creating a culture of family that led from the top down, that comes really from the top down, to create a safe place and an environment to explore past trauma and to grow beyond the person that was into the person that is now. And that's really wonderful to watch. For me, Scott and Victoria are the absolute epitome of a thriving survivor. People who have found meaning in life, accepting their trauma with an awareness and an understanding, whilst choosing to define the trauma rather than the trauma defining them. I'm going to read you the statement, the quote that's on screen at the moment. This is from someone that I worked with a few years ago. An absolutely amazing team who offer wonderful support programs and support programs and groups. The team are very passionate about what they do. Everything is a labour of love, and it shows. Ashley has poured her heart into thriving survivors, and her ambition and her work ethic is an inspiration. The programs offered by the team have something for everyone, and they really do work. I cannot recommend it highly enough, and I feel so grateful for what the team have been able to offer me. You have to approach this with an open mind, a willingness to start a new chapter in your life, an openness to try new things, and an acceptance that it's time for things to change. Give it a go. The person who wrote this, she came to me, and I very much seen a young version of myself. And as charity leaders and people that work with survivors, we've got boundaries and we're not supposed to become emotionally attached, right? But it happens. You get the people that really stick with you. And this young lady, when I seen her, I just seen somebody who needed someone to nurture, who needed someone to show her that there was another way through it all and that there was a light at the end of the tunnel. As the weeks went by and I was working with her, we would go out. So one of our problems was actually getting out and over the door. And I would take her and we would go for a walk, and then she would meet me and we would go for a walk, and then slowly we would meet each other and go for a walk. And over time, we managed to conquer that feeling of being unable to go over the door. This wonderful young woman is now a service manager for one of the biggest housing organisations in Scotland, and she's providing support, care support throughout and trying to change the trauma training that's implemented within that organisation. I, again, am humbled by it all. To be able to be part of these journeys and to hear these stories is the reason it all started, and it's the reason that I suppose I'm here today. So that's the successes. My inspiration. Where did my inspiration come from? When I was setting up the organisation, I remember talking to my husband and saying, if this can make a difference to just one person, then it won't all have been for nothing. And after 5 long away and working at it, here we are. I'm finally here. But my journey to Thriving Survivors was just as challenging and just as difficult as the journey in setting up the organisation. It was just a different set of experiences. It was just a different set of emotions. It's how you choose to deal with these things as they come up that will determine your path in life. So when my own support services failed me, I could have gone one of two ways. One, go back into the cycle of trauma where everything was all right for a bit, but then something would happen and I was right back to square one. Or two, recognise how far I'd come as a person and to actually make sure that I stayed on the up. After spending most of my adult years in a state of fear, distress, and upset, I decided that path 2 was the only way for me. I had to find a way to keep going and to push through it. And it was at this point that I started an open university degree in psychology. And this gave me all the tools that I needed to better understand myself and the other people around me. And I suppose that brings me back to emotional intelligence. I had created a working toolkit throughout this time, something that I still very much use to this day, every day. And most people know it as the Discovering Me programme, the very service that launched Thriving Survivors. So, I'll skip back. About me. As you may have noticed, I've been speaking for quite some time and I haven't really told you much about me as a person. I've spoke about the challenges, I've spoke about the successes, I've spoke about Thriving Survivors, but haven't really told you much about myself. And I suppose it's always really hard, isn't it, when you're trying to talk about yourself and you're wondering, what should I say? What should I not say? Should I read for this script? Should I have an auto cue? That's all been a real learning curve for me. The past 5 years have been a massive learning curve. But so is my entire life. I suppose as I've progressed on my journey from child to victim to survivor to founder and CEO of a national charity, I've learned an awful lot. And it's been a wonderful journey. It's been full of ups and downs, but whose life hasn't? I think the person that sits before you today is testament to that. No matter what challenges you're faced with and what life throws at you, there is always a way to come through it. Some of you may have guessed already that my life's been full of challenging experiences, just like many other people. As my bio states, and as Angela had said, I am a survivor of rape and domestic violence. These were, without a doubt, two of the biggest challenges that I've ever faced in my entire life. it's possible that by the time I was 21 years old, I'd faced more adversity than some people will ever face in a lifetime. The aftermath of the trauma is far-reaching. Indeed, it was years and years later before I actually told everyone what had happened and disclosed to the police, and I went through that whole process. I had completely dissociated from those negative experiences. The person that I was had all but vanished. I was no longer there. I was a very different person. But for years, I searched for that person that was gone. So it took me many years to find my voice, and many years to be able to sit here and to share that with you now. So who is the person that sits before you? As Angela said, I am a mum to 3 amazing children. I am a loving wife sometimes, and I am the owner of 2 King Charles Spaniels. However, I am also a strong, resilient, powerful woman who has a passion that one day will nudge the world in the right direction. I have got a belief in myself that absolutely no one can shake, because I spent the time and put in the hard work to discover who I am as a person, who I am as Ashley Scotland, not a child, not a victim, not a survivor, but me as a person. Despite all the adversity, I will always rise to any challenge that I'm faced with. And I can truly say that I love the soul that now lies within. I can experience joy, I can experience laughter, and I can experience love. And these were things that were completely lost to me. Every single day, I love life, and I relish the opportunities that each new day brings, and the learnings that will come with that. So I'll pose that question to everybody again. What indeed would you do? Thank you so much for the opportunity, and I've finished talking because I'm sure I'm running about my 25 minutes.
Not at all, Ashley. Listen, if we could bottle what your enthusiasm, cork it and send it to people, we should do it. Thank you very much.